Welcome, welcome, welcome to 2 p.m. with the Trigger. Rich Bontrager here with you for a very special day. As you can see on the screen, we're going to be celebrating Global Ethics Day, and that's going to be coming up on Wednesday, October the 15th. And today we're going to do a little bit of a discussion as we prepare to get deeper into Global Ethics Day. We'll bring that back up and talk more about that. If you don't know about the Global Ethics Day, it's an annual event produced by the Carnegie Council of Ethics in International Affairs. And the theme for Global Ethics Day 2023 is Ethics Empowered, using the power of ethics to build a better world. And in connection with that, the WEO, or the World Ethics Organization, is holding a virtual symposium entitled Ethics in Leadership, Creating a Culture of Ethics for Success. It's going to be a live virtual event, 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, October 18th. At the end, we're going to bring that link back up, and you can scan that and then join us live at the event. But today we have a great conversation planned for you as we are focusing on Global Ethics Day. And one of our panelists, Dr. Walter Earl Fluker, is my guest today. He's a distinguished founder of the Walter Earl Fluker and Associates. He holds several prominent academic positions, including being a distinguished professor at the Howard Thurman Center, Harvard University for Religion and Peace, and a professor emeritus of ethical leadership, formerly the Martin Luther King Jr. Chair at Boston. Welcome to 2 p.m. Live, Dr. Earl. Good to see you, Doctor.
Good to see you, Rich.
Thanks for taking the time to be with us. And you have been in this ethical soup for over 40 years, right?
Actually, my PhD training was in social ethics.
So we're
at Boston University.
So we're getting into ethics and leadership. There's a lot of different directions we could take this. On Global Ethics Day, the WEO is going to be into the leadership. In general, as you look through the globe, as you look at the global landscape, what does leadership look like today, in your viewpoint?
Leadership, I often say, is a lot like love. It's a many splendored and splintered thing. It's challenging. There are a plethora of definitions. Some are even contradictory. But I like to think of leaders in a very simple operational definition. Leaders are people or individuals, sometimes a small group of individuals who influence or impact the thinking, feelings, and or behaviors of a significant number of people. I borrowed that from Howard Gardner. I wish I'd made it up, but it's a simple definition which really places the emphasis on influence, the cognitive, the affective, and the behavioral.
Well, that's interesting. You're touching on the fact that leadership is not just, I have the badge, I have the title. It's a much more encompassing thing, or it should be much more encompassing, correct?
It is, because one cannot be a leader, first of all, without something like followers or a group that is part of that. Now, I've seen people try to lead without that, but it doesn't look good. But I also think of leadership within social historical context. That is, just a few weeks ago, I was at the Roosevelt Institute, and we were there for as recipients of the 4 Freedoms Awards under Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Eleanor Roosevelt. And of course, Roosevelt's context, historical context, in many ways may mirror some of what we see going on today, but it's different because it was a different time, a different rhythm, a different texture of experience. So leadership in different places, different spaces, different historical epochs demands certain kinds of skills and competencies that may not be demanded nor needed in others.
So interesting, because we're talking about Global Ethics Day, and this has been celebrated by over 100 different countries, have been actively involved in celebrating this over the last several years. So there are different cultures, different traditions. There's different layers that we all have, but we want to bring a ethical world together. So how do we do that when we all are different?
Well, if we answer that today, you and I should get a show, and we should do that together.
That'd be great.
I I do think several things are important. One of the things that I'm very grateful for is that the W.K. Kellogg Foundation sponsored my work in ethical leadership back in the early 90s, where I was looking at African American moral traditions. And my reason for doing it was because everywhere I looked for leadership literature, I failed to see African Americans represented on the theoretical side. So, thanks to the Kellogg Foundation, I was able to bring scholars together. We combed the narratives of African American leaders, et cetera, et cetera. And I came up with a model of ethical leadership, which I use, of course, not just among African Americans, but I use it in other conversations, especially global conversations. And it's a model that emphasizes character, civility, and community.
So that
One
goes back to your book from 2009, right?
part
That's a direct offshoot.
that was the product of all of these investigations, and we spent a lot of time developing the notion of character. And most of the time, when we think of character, Rich, we think of something that is fixed or inscribed or formed out of habit over time. And you shared with me some of your background. I'm
Yeah.
sure you were shaped by those conversations with your father and grandfather. That was part of your character.
Yeah.
But what we hone in on, which I think has global appeal and implications, is that character is the narrative script of an individual within the context of a larger social historical context. In other words, character, it has a kind of dramatic or dramaturgical, we like to say, uh, um, significance. You're an actor who arrives on the stage of history, and there are certain lines, certain scripts you have learned over time through traditions, through institutions, through practices and habits that predispose you to respond in certain ways. Thus, when we talk about character, we're asking leaders, especially, whether they are in Pakistan or in South Africa or in Hong Kong, we're asking them the same question: who are you really?
So the character and the ethical go together. I totally agree with you.
Mhm.
But as we live today, I think there's a big question mark on that. We are looking for leaders, but we're not seeing ethical or classy character right now from a lot of our leaders. They got the badge, they got the position, but they seem to throw that aside. How do we bring that back in? Because ethical conversations are sticky and a lot of people run from these conversations, but you're running toward it. So how do we turn that tide back to what you're describing, back to what I grew up with?
Yeah, I think that the character that you represent, Rich, is not an accident. I think it grows out of, again, traditions, institutions, practices, and habits that were formed earlier. The central question I was going to say for leaders is under character is what role, what character do I play in the larger drama? That's a question of identity. One has to also ask the ethical question, which is, does this character in any way increase the betterment of the collective or other human beings? How do I begin to understand my character again within context and situation? That's a very simple way of saying it, but it's a very important question.
So you have them look further out. They're not, yes, they're looking in, but they're also looking further out to say, how do I fit within this whole global, much larger landscape? Are leaders hesitant to put themselves that far out there? Do they dream that way? Do they think that way? Do you think, or do you think we're still in our own little bubble and that's all our leadership focus is right now?
The truth be told, we're already global. There is nothing that you nor I can do, think, or act upon without having global significance. We're global beings. Therefore, I like to think of character as related to civility in the broad sense. And civility is the place where you were asking me earlier whether or not I'm able to engage the other in a conversation that has some basis for rational accountability, which you I think is implied in your statement,
Yeah.
also has ethical concern.
Yes.
So, how can I have a conversation with Rich over something that I strongly disagree with without maiming him psychologically or physically or even killing him because I disagree? Uh,
Yes.
so, part of the appeal of ethical leadership, as I understand it, is practicing civility, which does place into the conversation certain norms, certain rules, and procedures of deliberation. And that cannot happen unless we are both willing to negotiate, to
Yeah.
negotiate our differences. Um, I have an exercise. Let's make this a little funnier. So it's a
Yeah. Yeah.
I have an exercise where I place leaders in an intersection. It's a creative visualization where worlds are colliding.
Yeah.
And I ask them to tell me what they see, what they feel, what they think, and what they do. And then I finally ask them, where are they really? The point is that we're always at intersections where worlds are colliding, life
Yes.
worlds where we come from, where Rich came from, Walter came from, but also system worlds. And system worlds are worlds that are decidedly political, economic, and they have much to do with technology and science. And I'm always in a place as a leader where I'm negotiating the point where these worlds meet and often collide. And when they collide, it's a very dangerous intersection. It's very noisy,
Yes.
and people are often in crisis at these intersections. The ethical leader's job, therefore, is to both inspire and to guide others in the art of negotiation on one hand, but also transformation of the intersection.
I love that word picture. Or coming the intersection and right, left, forward, whatever, but you have to navigate that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, crash, boom, you're in real serious danger. And negotiating, coming to the table to negotiate, not to get your way, not to force anything, but to negotiate. I think is a huge perspective that we might be
And the
missing
first
today.
question, Rich, is for the ethical leader is not what is right or wrong there, or good or bad.
Yes.
Those are questions we have. But the first question is, what's going on? Marvin Gaye was not the first person to ask that. What's going on? How do I understand the context, the social historical context that I'm engaged in at this intersection? And how might I reach out to the other with integrity, empathy, and respect so that I might be able to hear what the other is saying?
Wow, we're going to leave it there because that's a great segue to come and join us for the Global Ethics Day event. We want you to join us. Come to the table, listen, learn, be a part of the conversation. October the 15th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll go live. Hit the QR code, register to join us, and we will have an hour with Dr. Fluker, two other amazing experts in the field of leadership and ethics. Doctor, what would be your hope for a global ethics day? What's your hope that as the Carnegie Foundation does this, we do this, other organizations do things? What's your hope for this year, 2023?
My hope is perhaps now more than ever that we pause, take a deep look at ourselves, our humanity, and our relationship with everyone and everything that we call other, that is different from us. That we take a good look. And hopefully, if we can look long enough, hard enough, Rich, we might see ourselves, maybe for the first time.
Dr. Walter Earl Fluker. And again, he's going to be with us coming up on Wednesday, October the 15th. Look forward to having you back on the panel with us. And Doctor, thank you for taking the time here on 2 p.m.
Thank you.
That's going to wrap it up for 2 p.m. with the Trigger, but we don't forget we have special interviews like this. We're trying to set you up for an amazing time on Global Ethics Day. And again, the WEO is going to have this wonderful live symposium. Sandra D. Robinson will be back with me, and Sandra D. and I will be moderating the event. And again, it's going to be a wonderful day getting into ethics and leadership, creating a culture of ethics for success. Hit the QR code. Come and join us live on Wednesday, October the 15th. That's going to do it for the day. On the Trigger, Rich Bontrager will be back tomorrow at 2 p.m. live with the Trigger.